to get the party started, and let me go ahead and I'm going to pin Tammy and I so that we have everyone good to go. All right, Tammy, looks like you're pinned.
That sounds painful.
All right. Hey, welcome everyone to our session today. And I got to tell you, Tammy, this is a near and dear topic to me, follow-up. And, let's start off in the chat, if you will. I'd just be curious and give us kind of an honest assessment. I mean, how well do you feel like you got follow-up nailed? Meaning a 10, 1 to 10, 10, nothing gets through the cracks, man. It's foolproof. A 1, oh God, I'm in deep pain in that area. 5, just, maybe quite a bit's getting through. So where would we put this? So let's kind of see what we got there.
All right. Well, I don't see any 1s. There's no colanders.
I thought I saw somebody put negative. Okay, so it looks like we've got some work to do here, Tammy. So this is I think an area that so many of us would benefit from, just a sharpening the saw. And Tammy, what we're going to get into is some follow-up hacks for our folks today, and we're going to talk about the initial strategy session and the nurture mindset. We're going to get into using technology to get people on our tech so we can really monitor what's happening. And then we're going to look at how we really get some mind share, how we blast into the mind and make follow-up, work at a higher level. So before we get into this, Tammy, any key thoughts before we get cranking?
No, let's jump in. First of all of you with your cameras on, love seeing your beautiful faces. So thank you.
Oh yeah, man, that creates great engagement for us. And
yeah.
So Tammy, you and I started talking about what do we want to talk to these guys about. We guess just to start us off, a little bit about us. My name's Steve Schlueter, and I'm the co-coach with Tammy here in a program called Never Ending Referrals. And I'm a bold coach, part of the Keller Williams University master faculty. Prior to starting a leadership path with Keller Williams, was one of the top 20 RE/MAX agents in the state of Texas before making the move to KW and leadership. Tammy, tell them a little bit about Tammy.
Oh, very similar. Yeah, I'm in my 19th year with Keller Williams because I joined when I was like 13. And yes, I am also a bold coach, Keller Williams University master faculty. I am based out of the Carolinas region, and I stepped out of sales, I guess, almost 9 years ago. And this is my passion, right? So let's go.
Let's go. Well, Tammy, we started this conversation around follow-up because I was telling you about an experience that Shelly, my significant other, and I had while we were in Colorado, and we had connected with an agent locally, showing some interest in a certain area where we were considering purchasing, and we made a connection, and that person put me up on a saved search. And we would get email from time to time with something that would come on the market, and yet what did I never get, Tammy?
The personal call.
Never got the personal call, never got a handwritten note, never got any other connection other than what the saved search was sharing with me. Now, here's the challenge. This particular market, the MLS system where they did the saved search for me, doesn't convert well to viewing the listings on mobile. And so I set up another saved search somewhere else. In fact, it rhymes with pillow, right? So I went over to pillow, and I set up a search there. And so here's the thing: when a new listing would come up, the agent has no idea that I'm actually engaged with what's showing up, because I don't look at it there. I go look at it on pillow. So I just can't say the word. It's so awful. I go over on pillow over there, and I look there because I have a better experience. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But here's the other thing. In one of those searches one day, a listing comes on the market that is right what we're looking for. And I've had no correspondence from the agent. We don't have a buyer's rep agreement. We've never met even by Zoom to kind of establish a broad criteria. And so I just pick up and call the listing agent, and the listing agent, I find out there's already multiple offers. And so I go ahead and I say, okay, well, listing agent, why don't you go ahead and write it up? Because Tammy, I know there's a certain strategy called greed, right? And if I can get them to have both sides of the commission, I got a better shot at making this happen. Well, turns out one of the other offers was written by her. So I did it with another agent on her team. And we came up 8,000 short, well above the list price. Now, here's the other thing. The other agent on that deal, the agent on that transaction who wrote the offer for us, heard from her one time on a in-house listing that wasn't on the market yet, within a week of that initial offer. And that wasn't really a good match for us. It wasn't what we were looking for. And how many times do you think I've heard from her since?
None. And I think
Zero.
that's what I want to make sure that everybody hears.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because the follow-up wasn't there, and you were willing to write a cash offer on a home and ready to do something now.
Yeah,
they didn't follow up.
And so now here's the other thing. She's got us on a saved search too, and I get the emails. What she doesn't know is we've broadened our criteria, and my search that I've got with Pillow, is broader, because we've evaluated the market and we've looked at some different options, and she doesn't know this because she's not in touch. So now her saved search isn't even relevant anymore, either one of them, because they've not stayed in the game with us. So
can I share?
Yeah.
Some of do I share screen capability? Yeah. I do. So I want to share something with everyone that really, if you really just took in what Steve described, it can be easy for that to happen when we're busy. Think about the last year and when we were busy before the last 6 months where things maybe started to taper off. And it's easy to just drop touch with people and not see what they're doing. And so if all of a sudden they're not in our technology and we can't see what they're doing, and it doesn't give us a reason to follow up, a lot of times we don't. And so I want to share with you, is my screen shared, Steve?
You got it.
I got it. Okay. So I'm inside of Command. And if you log into Command and you come over on this left side, I want to show you something that has been updated, and it is a wicked cool tool. If you click on your contacts, and of course I'm going to be live TV, so there it is going to work. Yay. All right. So if I click on a contact over to this right-hand side, you're going to see something that is called saved searches. So you're going to click on that saved search. Now, when you click on that saved search, hang on a second, it allows you to create a saved search. You're going to allow it to use the area. And I have got my chat box is totally in the way here, and it's not letting me do this. Hang on a second. I'm going to stop my screen share. Sorry, guys. All right. So now let me go back. There you go. And so it's going to ask me here the location. And some of you might have been familiar with this before. And yet, if you click this down arrow, there is this new field called custom. If you click on custom, you'll see where it allows you to draw on a map. So if I live in North Carolina, so I would just bring this over to North Carolina, and I'm in the Mooresville area. I then can click here where it's allowing me to draw. So I can click here and say, I'd like them to get notified of everything in that area, and then hit apply. I can add anything else that I'd like to be filtered out, and then I'm going to click save. And so what that allows me to do is our technology, first of all, would have filtered what Steve was experiencing what Steve was experiencing in that lousy, what do you call it? The mobile version of that particular agent's MLS didn't convert to mobile. Well, ours does. And so now what would happen is if Steve was looking at the listings in that technology, you would then be able to see everything that he was looking at. That would allow you to reach out and say, you know what, this guy's busy. There's a reason to follow up. Maybe every other week, you know, hey, are you seeing what you're looking for? Are those still the parameters? And that's part of the follow-up. And so just using that particular tool, I think it's just mind-blowing that all of a sudden we've got this amazing capability, and so many of us just didn't know it was there. Right?
Well,
So,
and Tammy, the other thing about the save search feature that you guys have on Command, if you're utilizing Command, and if you're not, you know, does your current, technology allow you to do something similar? What's so much different about that versus having a new connect or anybody that I'm in conversation with on, say, a neighborhood nurture smart plan? What this allows me to do under save search is I can set the frequency to as often as daily. And that's a powerful thing, because I sit down with you in a consult, Tammy, as a prospective new client. Well, we'll decide the frequency you want to get this. And the more I can put it in front of you, and we know our competing things like Pillow are, you know, putting it out there just with massive frequency. You can do the same thing. And, you know, so that's a massive hack now that using Command is getting in there and taking advantage of that save search.
yes, Lori, that's a great question. She asked, can you do it with more than one location? Yes, they can have multiple save searches. So you would do them one at a time, like I just showed you, and then you would go back and you would do another one.
Yeah. Well, so Tammy, I'm going to pull our slides up, and as we get into this, and we're going to talk about the hacks that are key to follow up. And, you know, as we get started, let me just say that the main objective, the big objective with follow up, is to get in connection or flow with the people that are in your database. And Tammy, you know, and when I say connection or flow today, we're talking about the context of people that have raised their hand and said, I'm going to do something in the next, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. And they're an opportunity in Command, or they're in some kind of follow-up process, whatever we're going to use that is, it can be tech, it can be manual, it can be old school. We're going to talk about all of it. But the most important thing is I got to have a system that works for me. I have to be in connection with the people. I've got to create a flow with the people I'm following up. And, Tammy, I tell the story so often of Barbara, and I'm not going to give you all the whole story right now. I'm going to just give you the short version of I'm driving down our interstate, and one afternoon I get a phone call on the dash, and it says Barbara DeLamo. And I'm going, who the heck is Barbara DeLamo? And yet she's on my dash. So I decide to take the phone call. And after a 6-minute conversation, and we'll teach you all about the conversations, in a 6-minute conversation, Tammy, a person I hadn't spoken to in 7 years, 8 years, I felt completely connected with. And so I got back in her follow-up routine. I got back in, her deciding to make the connection. In fact, the call was a birthday call. It was actually a couple of weeks early, and which made it even more interesting because she really stood out. And then here's the interesting thing, though, Tammy. When I hung up the phone, I realized on the dash of my truck, it didn't say Barbara DeLamo. It said maybe Barbara DeLamo. And what that told me was she was in correspondence with me, not in my contacts. So when I got home, I decided, let me look her up and let me see what conversations I've been having with Barbara, because I do not remember her until she called me. And it turned out I had her in a bold class 7 or 8 years earlier. And so when I go back to this, Tammy, I had been receiving an email from Barbara every 3 weeks or so for 7 years.
Wow.
So what does that tell us, Tammy, about email?
You know what? It's not that email is dead. It's that email is not the relationship. And we open the emails when we are in a relationship with people. We don't when we're not.
Yeah. I mean, the next week I got another email from her. This time, because we were in flow and we had a connection, I actually opened it and I go, there's what she looks like. Okay. And we made that connection.
Yeah.
So understanding that as we talk about the hacks to follow up, you're going to probably want a multi-channel approach to how you connect with people. Email's just one of them. Your search process, just one of them. And Tammi, when we start thinking about referrals, walk us through some of these numbers from the National Association of Realtors.
Well, I think the most important piece of where buyers and sellers found their agent are those top two. And, I'm sure that you all know this and you've seen these before. They haven't changed. Some of the percentages change slightly. However, both of those top two referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative, or they used the agent previously. For buyers, that's 50% of the buyers. And so I think the question has to become, when you look at your business, is 50% of your business that are buyers coming from the fact that you're cultivating and nurturing those relationships out of your database? Because when we go over to the sellers, Steve, if you go to the next one, it's 63% of sellers. And that all came from the database, all from that communication that they had in knowing the real estate agent. And, Steve, I think that it can't just be me, right? When somebody has an amazing experience, I think, why would they ever use anybody else? I mean, come on, man, like it was awesome.
Yeah.
And yet the truth of the matter is the conversation is the relationship. And it's really easy for people to fall out of relationship with a real estate agent because there are so many, right?
Look at this one too, Tammi, personal contact by agent. So if you take the 63% and then you add 5, it's 68, because here's what I would suggest to you. Those that said personal contact by agent, that doesn't mean they converted on the first conversation.
Mm-hmm.
At least probably 50% of that or more was multiple conversations before the appointment ever occurred that secured the listing. And so right now you're really talking about 68%. And that's just, there's so much opportunity in the follow-up. In fact, Tammi, we've heard studies from Keller Williams research that says for top agents, 70% of the seller listings they take and the buyer rep agreements they get signed, those appointments were ultimately after multiple conversations where the relationship was nurtured to the finish line. And so not necessarily on the first conversation. And so as we dive into some of these hacks a little bit, and we kind of already gave you one in the Save Search, I want to just go back to Tammi and never ending referrals. One of the things that we talk about so frequently is that this is really the foundation of people are going to do business with you if they trust you. And how do I establish that trust? And there's 3 points, and this comes from the Harvard Business Review. It's called the Trust Triangle. And it was a study of how leaders develop trust with the people they led. And of course, Tammi and I took this and we said, well, this is no different than how you establish trust with people that you desire to do business with. And, we have to move, particularly when times are different today and it's not rush in all our markets. We have to really take this pivot now and move from transactional. We got to move to relational.
Amen.
Yeah. And Tammi, that seemed to hit a chord with you. Thought?
Just amen. It is.
Amen.
Well, all the business that you're looking for, is in that database. Yeah. And it goes back to, please, if you haven't heard these numbers before, write these down. In MREA, or the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, it said for every 12 met contacts, meaning people that know you, that you communicated with systematically and consistently over a year, you could expect 2 pieces of business, right? 1 referral and 1 direct piece of business with them. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, it was every 50 non-met. meaning cold calling, right? Doing all the things where we don't know someone. It was 50 people to get one piece of business. And by the way, it still took the same amount of follow-up to get that one piece of business. And I think what happens to us sometimes in this business is we get so caught up in the chasing the right now that we forget that everything that you're looking for is in that database. And by the way, it is the smartest place for you to work, especially going into the market where we are now, where we got to double down the activities, double them down with the people that you know.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And so I go back to that trust triangle. So those 3 points were logic, empathy, and authentic you. They experience the real you. So the logic is going to be in you helping people understand the dynamics of the market, that you know the market, that you're a source of knowledge and expertise. They believe that your judgment and reasoning are sound. And so that's how you have to say, okay, I got to have a plan to deliver on the logic point. And then the second point, empathy. Tammi, how do you get somebody to experience empathy?
Seeing things through their eyes,
Okay.
right? It's, putting yourself in someone's position, truly doing that so that it comes out of you and they feel that empathy, because people can feel that, whether you're being genuinely empathetic.
So it's like in session 2 of narrating referrals, when we get into active listening and to acknowledge and validate, all these soft skills that make that delivery of that forward, where we get to really deliver that experience. And then authentic you, what does that mean, Tammi?
Well, it means you're being you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure all of you have been in a sales situation where you knew somebody was quote unquote selling you and they probably weren't being themselves, and you can sense that. We always say everybody has a BS detector, right? Believability scale. Make sure everybody, for the record, make sure everybody heard me say believability scale. And you have to be you, right? So how do you do all of this? That literally is how you establish trust, right?
Yeah.
People know that you know what you're doing, you care about them, and that you're being genuinely you. So how do we do that and incorporate all of that into follow-up?
Well, let me pull this up here. And so here's one of the first things I'm going to share with you today, Tammi. And as we get into hack number 1, I want you to write this down. The free strategy session / the nurture mindset. And today, when we're, the market we came out of, Tammi, was this reactive market where somebody said, jump, how high? And we get out and show houses. Everybody that was in the market was ready to do almost whatever it took. Your good counsel was, how much cash do you have willing to go above appraisal? I mean, these were the things that you had to deal with. And one of the things that when we start thinking about first the nurture mindset, Tammi, and I'm going to skip this and I'm going to come back to this in a second. I think about the nurture mindset. And if I were to just say, okay, as I'm out lead generating, as I'm communicating with my database and they send me referrals, Tammi, very likely you could send me a referral and it'd be a great referral. And is everybody ready to move that day?
Unfortunately, no.
The answer is no. They might have a lease to fulfill. They might have some other criteria they're working through to be ready. And so I put them off into the future. In fact, I could start booking next year right now. Somebody says, well, we just signed a lease. They were at a cocktail party and they were talking about how they'd love to buy. And they were saying that somebody in our database. And as we were doing our DTD2, we'll talk about what that is in a minute. They gave us their name and said, hey, you ought to talk to my friend Tammi. I know we were at a cocktail party. They talked about wanting to buy. I connect with Tammi, find out she's, a year out. Well, I put her up in January for a follow-up. And by the way, Tammi, if I start getting this nurture mindset where the nurture is as important as the now business. If I have the mindset that 70% of my business is going to come from nurtures, then I see that as valuable. And I'm going to get very strategic about it. And then look what my calendar begins to look like. I go, okay, I've got 4 things already in April that I've got people that are key follow-ups, that was the follow-up date. I've got 4 in May. Man, look at May, June. July, boy, look, I gotta get some more for July, but those are going to fill in as I continue to do my lead generation. And Tammy, what's exciting is when I get this referral my nurture mindset, I start to think about that group as it's absolute gold.
It is.
And we were in such a reactive market for so long that so much of that got neglected. And I'm going to suggest that you get very intentional about your follow-up. And Tammy, let me go ahead and pull up something else on the screen here. I want to talk about the free strategy session. So Tammy, if you were 12 months out, 10 months out, 8 months out, the market's not going to be the same then, and the homes aren't going to be available that would be suited for you. And yet I'm going to ask you to come into the office now. And Tammy, here's what I'm going to say, so Tammy, got it. Sounds like you're down the road a little bit. And here's what I'd love to do. And I don't mind. I know it's going to be a while before you're really ready. I'd love to have you come into the office, or I'd be happy to stop by your home, whichever's more convenient. And I'd love just to have a free, no obligation kind of strategy session. And what we'll do is I'll take you through what's going on in the market, what we're forecasting in the market. Also kind of go through what some of the dynamics are around interest rates and, what we might be anticipating in the future. And then what we can also do is we can set you up on a search that starts getting you familiar with options in the market. How does that sound?
Sounds fantastic.
And then I'll schedule a meeting with Tammy, and I'm going to educate her. First, I'm going to just go through a needs analysis and get to know her, build rapport. First I'm going to go to the empathy piece. I'm going to create personal connection. I'm going to get to know Tammy's lifestyle, Tammy's needs. And then I'm going to ask her questions. What have you heard about the market? Because I want to know what programming I might have to work with about whether the market's good or if she's scared of the market. And then one of the things we developed in our San Antonio market was this San Antonio housing guide. It was, we call it San Antonio Housing Market, a Window of Opportunity. And what we were finding is the consumer was so confused about, is it a good market? Should I wait till the market's going to crash? What about interest rates? Inflation? There's all these different conflicting stories they would hear, both local and national. And we said, we've got to build a guide. So we built a 9-page consulting guide. Here's a few pages out of it, where we addressed interest rates, past, present, and future. We addressed, are we overvalued? We addressed the opportunity to negotiate because you have choice today. We addressed the history of real estate in San Antonio, and based upon historical, what's it likely to do going forward? And the whole thing, Tammy, was to build some confidence that, okay, and by the way, Tammy, I really, this becomes vital because if I can provide some certainty and they believe what I say, and because I've established a foundation of trust in that meeting, when they start hearing other things in the media or in their news feed, they're prepared for that. I tell them, you're going to get a lot of things that are conflicting because, what do news feeds do? Do they bomb you with positives, or do they attempt to bomb you with negatives? What headlines create clickbait? And also, you're going to see a lot of news that's national, that's contrary, possibly. And my job is to keep you up to date. As we get closer to time, we'll update you on all these trends. And yet I want you to know that we do the research. If you have any questions along the way, if you see something and it impacts you a certain way, in a way that you have questions about how this might affect your strategy, let's just connect. And so, Tammy, if I go back to this, after we've gone through the strategy session, we're going to do hack number 2, the saved search. And that was where you walked us through that right in the beginning. We walked right into that. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go create that saved search for Tammi, and in this case, Shelly. I'm going to create that saved search. We're going to talk about the frequency in which she's going to get it. And by the way, it's going to take you to an optimized site where you can go view all those properties. And I'm going to start nurturing her into using my technology. And Tammi, the other part of this nurturing process, before we leave nurturing, if you guys haven't seen this video on the KW YouTube channel, Gary in the Box, I want to encourage you to just, whatever you do, whether you have a nurture follow-up system in command and you put it in opportunities and you manage that really well through opportunities, that's one way to do it. Another way is Gary Keller in that video, Tammi, he talks about a 1 through 31 file.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great agent in Lake Travis, Texas, Gene Arant. And Gene Arant, when Gene watched that video, he said, I lose things in my follow-up all the time. I don't trust it. I'm going to catch it in my technology. I have a habit sometimes of just snoozing task when they come up, and because I get busy, and I'm going to do it differently. So he goes ahead and puts everybody in their technology. In fact, we have a whole section on never ending referrals in one of the workbooks on his workflow around this. And he puts them in his technology so they're on his 36 touch. And yet the date sensitive follow-ups are all managed in a 1 through 31 file. And if Tammy's in April for a follow-up, she's going to be in my April folder. And then she's going to have a number up in the upper corner. Maybe I said I would call her on April 10th. And so when April comes around, I go to the 1 through 31 and Tammy's in the 10. And when the 10 gets here, well, her file, if I've got an assistant and my assistant has set it on my desk, and everybody who's got a follow-up of 10 has got a contact card, and it's tied to a record in command, and they get the follow-up. And then based upon an action plan is set forward, or a future follow-up. Now, Tammi, that's really old school. And yet if that's what it takes for me to follow up,
mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
That's how I started my business, everyone. And I operated it that way for quite a while. Mm-hmm. That I had two of those little carry boxes that went with me. I had the 1 through 31, and then I also had my 8x8 in another one. And it's a great way to not drop everyone. And if we're not logging into the technology, sometimes technology can actually take us out of the game if we're not using it wisely, or it just doesn't work for us. So, do what works for you. Go back and find that video. It's fantastic. And Steve, I do want to go back and talk about something very quickly, that when you were talking about the strategy session with the buyer, Michael had asked, can we do the same thing with a seller? And it's exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It's you being the economist, you being the trusted advisor. I promise you, if you were to Google the housing market wherever you live, you're going to see articles that say it's great, and you're going to see articles that say it's horrible. And so there's such conflicting things coming out in the media and the news sources that the public use. And the truth of the matter is, guys, you are the doctor, right? I mean, absent going to a doctor for a true diagnosis, you go to WebMD and you could misdiagnose. And so they're misdiagnosing because they're using a tool that really isn't effective. So that's what this is really about.
Well, you got it, Tammi. And, yeah, it absolutely is for any of them, so here, when we look at the guide, we're dealing with, interest rates, we're dealing with inflation and the impact long-term on interest rates, the housing shortage that we have in San Antonio, along with, now, by the way, you notice we've taken article clippings. We don't use this, in promotional things due to copyright, but just for our own little guide, fastest growing community, more than Phoenix. Here's a Forbes article where we deal with how San Antonio versus the nation dealt with a recession, inventory levels and how they compared in a normal market, which about the same to what we're at today. Addressing, are we overvalued? Here's another one, going back and again, using news articles to validate, our position, and then kind of a summary of all those, key things that that are going on in the market. So you have resources like that. Go find them for your market and build a story. And it's like in the section on overvalued, are we overvalued? I open with what's written there is, well, this can be difficult to address because if you look at, and we address the real issues, and yet we make a case that it's probably safe to invest in San Antonio because, and we always in the conversation say, and by the way, there's no crystal ball, because we don't want to just, we just educate people in a way that helps them make their own decision. So Tammi, I guess the last section of this, so number 2 was, mortgage, I'm sorry, not mortgage hacks, the save search. And now when we get into hack number 3, I want to talk about blasting your way into their mind. Tammi, we talk about this in session, I guess, 5 of Never Ending Referrals, when we get into mindshare and winning the mindshare battle. And this was from Reese and Trout and their book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And he said this, he said, if you want to make a big impression on another person, you cannot worm your way into their mind and then slowly build up a favorable opinion over a period of time. The mind doesn't work that way. So Tammi, when somebody new comes in, and I will tell you, if I have this conversation with them, I've got massive mind share, I've got trust, I've got relationship. Maybe they're not ready for that. And so how am I going to blast my way into their mind? So Tammi, we talk about in session 5, we get into the 8x8 campaign. And, this is the one this is the framework that David Huffaker shared with us out of Middle Tennessee. David's a $300 million producer. And Tammi, talk to us about the 8x8.
So the 8x8 is, and some of you may be familiar. However, what we just shared with you from Reese and Trout is it is a way to literally blast your way into taking mind share with a new relationship, and maybe it's a rekindle of one that you've neglected for some time. It's just the way to get into that mind share. And so, I mean, with David, their goal every week with their team, and I would encourage you all to adopt this, is to meet 5 new people a week. And you send them out that handwritten note at the end of the week. If you've put 5 notes on your desk and at the end of the week they're still there, then guess what? You got to get out and meet yourself some new people, right? So it's all about meeting new people. Then it's the follow-up text to make sure that they receive the card. It was great to meet them. Then they send an item of value. And I mean, that could be around market stats. That could be, you might do a year in review for the area that you serve, since we're still in the first quarter, something that they would hang on to and find valuable that poises you to be an expert in the area. Then it's a call, just making sure, checking in, making sure that they're getting everything you're sending, anything that you can do to help. Then they might send some team stats. And if you don't have your own, use your market centers. Then it's a text. And that week 7, if you want to make a note on that, that one, he said, is they do a refrigerator magnet, or it's something that has some shelf life, something that people will hang on to because it's useful for them. And then it's the call, and then they go into the 36 touch. Steve, what are some, let's go through some of those items of value that they might be able to share, because I think that's really important to this.
Absolutely. And of course, all this can then flow over into a 36 touch from there. But here's one item of value. We have some of our agents that get together and they publish a newsletter. And this is, in fact, It's a 4-page newsletter, and here's 2 of the pages, and they work to put this together, and they do it quarterly. And so here's the great thing: when it goes out quarterly, this is out of my Round Rock office, when it goes out quarterly, then they get overruns of these, and they have them sitting on their desk. I've got one in my hand right here. They've got them sitting on their desk. And so if you're a new relationship, I can just turn off around my desk, put it in an envelope with a personal note, and there's an item of value. Another one that they do, and they do it monthly, is they feature a local artist on a postcard. And on the back of that postcard, it's got, here's what's going on in our community and surrounding areas. So it's got events. That one tends to have a little shelf life, Tammy. Then they also, that goes out once a month. It goes out every month, also once a month. On the months they don't send out the newsletter, so this would be 8 times a year, an infographic goes out, jumbo postcard. It's got trends. This is out of our San Antonio office. It's got the trends, and then it's got an interpretation of the market on the backside and calls to action to get engaged. So Tammy, these can all be part of your 36 touch. They can also be integrated into having extras of those sitting on a shelf that you do some overruns on. You work with a local print mail vendor, and as we do, and they will set up templates for you, make it real easy to execute. And I got to tell you, direct mail isn't dead. I mean, this is a nice value add piece that they're able to put out there, and got community stats on the back. This is a really high quality postcard, jumbo, and they're all good looking pieces. And so there they are, real in the flesh. And Tammy, so when we look at this, they've got the 8x8, and then have you gone back and have you really committed to a 36 touch? And by the way, we advocate in Never Ending Referrals to take it to a 52 touch system. And so 2 emails, 20 touches by postcard, another 4 might be a newsletter or item of value. You take that, that's 48 touches. Add what we call your DTD2 conversations, and then you're at 52 touches. So Tammy, one of the things that you said earlier was the conversation is the relationship. Talk to us about that for a second.
Well, it is. It goes back to we feel like when somebody closes a transaction, for instance, that it was amazing because you are all amazing and you provide an amazing experience. And we feel like that's enough that they should think of us. And I'm going to challenge the mindset that they do not want to hear from you. That's not true. It's sometimes we feel like when we're reaching out that we're taking from people instead of providing value. And number one, let's not call it lead gen. Let's just call it contribution calling, right? Because maybe it's the whole idea behind lead gen makes you feel like you're taking instead of giving. And, if we're giving and we're bringing value to people, we're bringing clarity where there's confusion, then, oh my gosh, the conversation is the relationship. And by the way, Steve, you don't have to call and talk about real estate all the time. If you're in communication with people enough, they think of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then Tammy, let's, to that point, and if you guys have not taken Bold or Never Ending Referrals, that we introduced the DTD2 system in Never Ending Referrals, and we've loaned it to Bold. And DTD2 stands for doing the database to, and I'm going to have Megan, our assistant, in a moment. She'll drop the DTD2 schedule in the chat for you. But what is DTD2? And essentially what we've done is gamified how you call your database. And it's essentially calling 2 letters by last name. And we've combined them to create a proper mix, monthly, weekly, as far as percentage of your the population. We've also designed it so the last 2 months of the quarter are lighter to kind of allow you to regroup and plan for your next quarter. And so it's really just 2 letters by last name. And yet it's not just 2 letters by last name, Tammy. There's a couple of unique things that go with this when you play out the database too. When you say, I'm going to commit to these 13 two-letter groups, and when they come up on the schedule, they're going to get a call. And we teach something called the 3-attempt approach. That means if it's A and W week, well, anybody whose last name begins with A or last name begins with W gets a call attempt on maybe Monday, and if I got a big database, Tuesday as well. Tammy, am I going to talk to everybody on the first attempt?
Nope.
Nope. So maybe Wednesday I make a second attempt. Maybe I've got 50 in that two-letter group, and I make a second attempt on Wednesday, and maybe I only talk to 15 on the first attempt. So I've got 35 left. I call the remaining 35, and I talk to 15 more. Now I've talked to 60% instead of 30% of my two-letter group. And then Tammy, the remaining 20 people, I give them one more shot on Thursday at a different time slot. And maybe I talk to 10 more. And now I've talked to 40 of my 50. And if the conversation is the relationship, Tammy, I took 40 conversations out of 50 to a high level versus 15. And by the way, on the first call, I left a voicemail. We've got a voicemail strategy. We have a possible follow-up text strategy. All these things that you can do to make the most of that DTD2 this week. And so, Megan, if you'll go ahead and put that link to the DTD2 schedule in the chat. You've got that in the chat. If you want to download the schedule, get on the same level that everybody else in the country is using for calling their database, we'd love you to be on that train as well. So Tammy, just last thought on DTD2. I mean, there's some hacks around DTD2 itself. And we've got an offer for you guys we'd like to talk about as we wrap up, and we'll stay around as well and answer your questions. And Tammy, what else do you want to tell these guys about DTD2?
That's where the magic happens. Mm-hmm. It's like the eggs in the cake recipe. When you leave the eggs out, it's brownies, right? It's not as fluffy. And the DTD2 is where the magic happens. The conversation is the magic sauce. In fact, here's what I promise you all. You could strip away all that other stuff, all those other touches. And as long as you have those quarterly conversations, you will mine more out of that database than if you did all the other stuff and took out the conversations. It's the cement that makes everything else work. It makes them open the emails. It makes them respond to the text. It makes them, hang on to the postcard. So it is the magic sauce. And I know it's never the magic pill that everybody is hoping for. And yet it is the one.
So that you got it, Tammy. So one of the things I want to share with you in before we wrap up, folks, is we want to invite you to join Tammy and I in our program, Never Ending Referrals. And we are live the first 3 Mondays of every month at 12 Central. And we take you through our 8 core lessons. In fact, Megan, if you'll drop that in the chat, the overview of our program. We take you right through the core lessons of Never Ending Referrals. We open each session with an expert interview. In fact, Tammy, who do we have today when we go live? We've got an amazing interview today.
Yes, Renee Quigley.
And she's actually a master of DTD2, I believe. So in fact, for being on here today, we are going to make sure you get that interview as a bonus, as a follow-up from us. So if you'll be on alert for that, you could join us at noon. I'm not sure they could process your registration fast enough. And yet here's what we would like to invite you to do is, and that's be part of our community. If you know that follow-up is just one of the things that you really have to master around your database, we'd like you to be part of our Never Ending Referrals community. We meet 3 times a month. Each session begins with an interview or a tech session where you learn things like the Save Search, the latest things that are working for us. And then we go through one of the core lessons of Never Ending Referrals. Being part of our live community is $39 a month. In fact, Megan, if you put the registration link in there, we would love to invite you to take on mastering this most important business asset you have, which is your database. And so, I mean, Tammi, we just kind of touched on a smidgen of kind of what we do, what we teach. If this was valuable to you and you would like to immerse yourself, please join us. You can go to neverendingreferrals.com, or the direct registration link is for you in the chat right now. So Tammi, any wrapping up thoughts? So we talked the strategy session and the importance of embracing the nurture. We looked at the hack of the save search, the fact that we can get people to our technology. And by the way, that's more likely to happen if I have the strategy session. And today we've got to spend more time at the kitchen table or the conference table with people because it's confusing. And we talked about that 8x8 and that 36 to 52 touch to blast into the mind. And if you want to go deeper, we'd love to be your partner on that. Tammi, what do you want to leave these folks with today?
You know, this is your most important business asset, is your database. You can sell a real estate business, and you can only sell a real estate business where you've built it foundationally, where it brings predictable and consistent results through this database. And going into the market that we are in right now, guys, this is where the magic happens, and where you're going to thrive, right? I think people who have these great sustainable businesses succeed through the relationships that they have with people they know. So it's time for you all to capture that 70% of business coming from follow-up, and stop chasing the now business, and really get up in the morning and love your business. By the way, oh my gosh, you wake up every morning going, carpe diem, let me go make some contribution calls, right?
Well, and Megan, if you'll put that registration link in there one more time, and Tammi, to your point, is the now business is there and you're going to get some. Yeah. Just get excited about, you know, in one of your sessions, you mentioned the book Go for No. And I would just keep going. I got a yes, I got a live one. Keep going and get some no's, because somewhere in there, you're going to get some nurtures. And those nurtures are absolute a treasure. And, you know, today it's back to being relational, not transactional. Well, thank you for being with us today. I trust y'all got value from our session. Again, my name's Steve Schlueter, the amazing Tammi Juengst. We're here to serve you. You can find us. I'm Steve S at kw.com, Tammi J with an I at kw.com. And if you have questions about Never Ending Referrals, info at neverendingreferrals.com. You can find us in all those places. We're here to serve you and make your world just a little bit easier. So thanks, guys. We have any more questions?
Have a great week.
Looks like we're good. All right. Thanks, guys.